Hey, what's going on, YouTube? I just wanted to get you guys an update to the London Thomas story. I was doing that as well. Pretty much there's an update to her case, but I'm also going to play the actual video of the hearing. The mother of the ex-boyfriend appeared in court this morning. From what I understand is that her charges were dropped. So we're going to find out why, do a breakdown of why, and also verify that to be factual by looking up her court records to see if that case has actually or really or technically been dismissed. Just to fact check what that to fact check the claim that's going on. I kind of feel like it's like, damn, we still need to find out who did this to London. As far, well, not the who, but we need to find out what happened to London, and both need to be charged. Her charges were dismissed without prejudice. What that means is that if the state find actual evidence that she did in fact lie to the police or had anything to do with anything, they can pretty much come back and charge her again. But they have to have sufficient evidence to do that. But let me just go ahead and pull up the video because it's not a long video. These preliminary probable cause hearings, they're only about maybe 5 to 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It depends on what the situation is as far as the length of the hearing. But let me just go ahead and get that pulled up for you guys. Okay.
Thank you. Is the prosecution ready to proceed? Today's date and time is scheduled for preliminary examination in this matter.
Video is terrible.
No, Your Honor, we are not going to be proceeding today. If I may.
Yes, please.
I became assigned to this case after the defendant had already been charged under the statute. She started lying to a police officer in a violent crime investigation under MCL 750479C. I had earlier requested that the court adjourn this preliminary exam because one of the witnesses was unavailable at that time. Mr. Johnson raised this issue of whether an agent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation was a peace officer under the statute. Since that time, I have done some research. I've consulted with other prosecutors in our office. It's alleged that the defendant made these false statements to special agents from the FBI. I've communicated with them. Neither one of them were ever licensed as a police.
I'm sorry, y'all. Okay, I'm going to pause it. This is not my audio. This is the actual Fox 2 Detroit's channel. So I don't know what's going on with the audio, but it's terrible. But I'm going to try to recap what they're basically arguing. Right now, the prosecution, that's who you're seeing right now. I don't know his name. They didn't mention it. They did. It went kind of fast. But he is the prosecutor from Wayne County who was prosecuting the mother of the ex-boyfriend of London Thomas. They're trying to pretty much argue, I guess, official capacities is whether or not that peace officer was acting in his official capacity when she was talking to him or when he were talking to the suspect. And I believe that's probably why the case was dismissed. But I want to go ahead and finish it, just give you guys the background of what's going on. And as far as a lot of people are probably wondering, like, why was the case dismissed? Why did they drop the charges? Her charge was that she was lying to a peace officer. But if he was not in that official capacity at the time of the investigation, I don't think that that's illegal is what they were trying to allege. But let me just go ahead and finish it.
Police officer in the state of Michigan. There were no other law enforcement agents present when this interaction occurred. When you review the statute specifically under 750479C, parent 5, subsection B, they define what a peace officer is. A federal agent is not defined under that statute. There are some statutes that would permit a federal agent to be authorized to be a police officer. But however, the way the legislature wrote this statute, I don't believe that trying to proceed under that theory would survive a public review. So with that, Your Honor, I don't believe we're going to be able to proceed. I don't think we could establish the elements to climb up until preliminary exam. So therefore, I'm moving to dismiss this case without prejudice.
Thank you.
So yeah, that's the prosecution argument. They're the ones who's they're the ones who's trying to drop. Let me backtrack. They're the ones who's deciding to drop the charges against the mother of London. Not the mother of the boyfriend, ex-boyfriend. They pretty much could not. They were trying to determine whether or not a federal agent can be considered as a peace officer, because he was the only one, I believe, around. I believe he was the only one that was close to her at that time of the incident when they were trying to investigate. I don't believe he even announced whether or not he was even an agent, or, I don't believe he disclosed his identity is what it's sounding like. But let me just go ahead and finish it, because I just want to make sure I'm giving out accurate information. From what it sounded like this guy, the agent that she spoke with, was not considered to be a peace officer in so many ways under the Michigan state statute. So in that instance, the prosecution would have no other choice but to drop the charges if that was not in fact a peace officer, because what would they be charging her for?
No, Your Honor, I appreciate Mr. Brazzi's recitation. Again, this was talked about at the last hearing, and I appreciate his office doing the right thing here. So I have no objection of.
She looked nervous.
I would just ask with prejudice, Your Honor, simply because obviously there's no way with the federal agent public that could persist.
The court was aware of the argument as it was raised at the last session that we were here. The court did also look up the statute. Based on the information that's given from the prosecution, the court will dismiss this matter against Ms. Pendergrass. Ms. Pendergrass, stay. You're okay. The court does dismiss this matter, but it will be without.
I ain't buying that good act, lady. You involved.
Your Honor, there's a matter of, I believe she has a tether on. She should report back to Wayne County for that.
Or to be removed, yes. That was a condition of the bond, correct?
It is correct. Will that be transmitted to them, or how should I? That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's nothing further, that concludes this matter.
Thank you, Your Honor. You just have a great day.
Thank you as well.
So that concludes that. But let me run this back, though. I want to play it again twice just to make sure I have all the information as far as the why they're dismissing the charge. And I'm going to be silent on that particular portion.
C. I had earlier requested that the court adjourn this preliminary exam because one of the witnesses was unavailable at that time. Mr. Johnson raised this issue of whether an agent of the Federal Bureau of Investigation was a peace officer under the statute. Since that time, I have done some research. I've consulted with other prosecutors in our office. It's alleged that the defendant made these false statements to special agents from the FBI. I've communicated with them. Neither one of them were ever licensed as a police officer in the state of Michigan. There were no other law enforcement agents present when this interaction occurred. When you review the statute specifically under 750479C, parent 5, subsection B, they define what a peace officer is. A federal agent is not defined under that statute. There are some statutes that would permit a federal agent to be authorized to be a police officer. But however, the way the legislature wrote this statute, I don't believe that trying to proceed under that theory would survive a public review. So with that, Your Honor, I don't believe we're going to be able to proceed. I don't think we could establish the elements to kind of the preliminary exam. So therefore, I'm moving to dismiss this case without prejudice.
Thank you. Any objections?
Okay, I just wanted to replay that because I wanted to kind of understand what they were. The audio was kind of choppy, but yeah, in so many ways, the reason why the prosecution dropped the case was pretty much that whoever Charlotte Pendergrass was questioned by was not considered to be a peace officer under the Michigan statute. So by law, the prosecution would have no other choice but to dismiss the charges against her. However, towards the end, they are dismissed without prejudice. What that means is that they can possibly charge her again if they have sufficient evidence that pretty much counters what they're alleging now. So yeah, if they're able to get more information, or if information comes down later the line, down later the road, shall I say, or down the road later on, they can pretty much get her again with this type of charge. So that's why they dismissed it without prejudice. Dismissed with prejudice means they can never come back after her again, regardless of what happens. So yeah, I just pretty much wanted to get you guys that update as to why the charges were dismissed. I kind of knew it was a reason why. Let me stop sharing this because I also want to show her court record as well to see if that's officially been dismissed. She's still involved though. I feel like she's involved somehow, some way. Yeah. This is the defendant, Charlotte Pendergrass. Case closed. Yep. So they dismissed it. Yep. Disposition dismissed. Okay. So yeah, right here where it says dismissed. Yep. Her charges were dropped and dismissed. Lying to a peace officer during a violent crime investigation. Yeah, so that was the reason as to why her charges were dismissed. I guess during the investigation, it was determined that the federal agent or federal agents cannot be considered a peace officer under Michigan statute, only in certain exceptions. But let me look up that real quick. Okay, so yeah, that I just verified that information. It says in Michigan, federal agents are generally not considered peace officers with the same general enforcement authority as state or local law enforcement officers. While federal agents can enforce state laws under specific circumstances, their primary authority comes from federal law. So with this being a state crime, pretty much, they had no jurisdiction in so many ways. They had no grounds to investigate her. That's why the charges was dropped, because it was not a state police officer, it was a federal agent. Now, according to the Michigan legislature, under section 764.15D, let's see, what does this say? And I'm gonna share it so y'all can see what I'm talking about. I want to just keep reading without y'all looking at this as well. This is informative information. It just gives you context as the why it happened, even though it's not fair. But it just gives you the why. Okay, so it says a federal law enforcement officer may enforce state law to the same extent as a state or local officer only if all of the following conditions are met. The officer is authorized under federal law to arrest a person with or without a warrant for a violation of a federal statute. The officer is authorized by federal law to carry a firearm in the performance of his or her duties. One or more of the following apply. The officer possesses a state warrant for the arrest of the person for the commission of a felony. The officer has received positive information from an authoritative. Sorry, let me read that over. I don't like that. That's sloppy. The officer has received some positive information from an authoritative source in writing or by telegraph, telephone, teletype, radio, computer, or other means that another federal law enforcement officer or a peace officer possesses a state warrant for the arrest of the person for the commission of a felony. Let's see. The officer is participating in a joint investigation conducted by a federal agency and a state or local law enforcement agency. The officer is acting pursuant to the request of a state or local law enforcement officer or agency. The officer is responding to an emergency. Let's see. I'm stopping because I'm reading in my head, y'all. To except as otherwise provided in subsection, a federal law enforcement officer who meets the requirements of subsection 1 has the privileges and immunities of a peace officer of this state. This section does not impose liability upon or require indemnification by the state or a local unit of government for an act performed by a federal law enforcement officer under this section. As used in this section, emergency means a sudden or unexpected circumstance that requires immediate action to protect the health, safety, welfare, or property of an individual from actual or threatened harm or from an unlawful act. Local unit of government means a county, city, village, or township. Honestly, though, I feel like there should be an exception to that in this case, because this one says the officer is participating in a joint investigation conducted by a federal agency and a state or local law enforcement agency. Correct me if I'm wrong, but DPD, Detroit Police Department, was the one working with the FBI, if I'm not mistaken. So I feel like that federal agent should be bound by the exception, should be warranted with the exception. I could be wrong, but that's just my personal opinion, because it said these are the exceptions to a federal agent acting as a peace officer. And this one right here, that's what happened. The Detroit Police Department and the FBI began the investigation, and 3 weeks later, they found her in a Jeep in Southfield. So I don't know why that federal agent couldn't pass for that exception, but I'm gonna find out. But yeah, this is crazy. But I just wanted to get you guys an update to the London Thomas case. Hopefully now we can move on to the ex-boyfriend, because we know he's facing the murder charges right now. I believe he's still out on bond, as well as the mother. And now she still is, or she's about to lose her GPS tether. So pretty much she's out on bail. Her son is out on bail. And yet we still don't know what happened to London Thomas. But I do hope this case moves forward. I hope that they are charged properly. I hope the prosecution doesn't drop the ball. And I hope they get justice for London Thomas. But that's all I got for you people. Later on, 7:00 p.m., I will be going live talking about Tory Lanez and Megan Thee Stallion and the evidence that pretty much clears Tory Lanez in so many ways. But yeah, that's all I got for you people. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Appreciate you. Peace. Have a good one.